In the last video, we counted the number of loans that met certain conditions. Now we're going to add up the value of those loans that meet certain conditions. So we're transitioning from the COUNTIF to the SUMIF and SUMIFs functions. So in this case, I actually want to show you how we would do this in an if framework first, returning to what we had done earlier. We used an if, and we used a 1 or a 0 to indicate whether a loan met a certain condition. If what we're interested in is knowing the total value of the loans that meet those conditions, well, we can change what the value of true is. Right, in this case, our value of true is 1, but we can change that to instead be C6, or the actual loan amount. If we make that change and copy that down, what we're going to see is that now at the top, where we were summing up our loan amount, we were counting the loans before and we saw 8 loans. Now we see the actual total value of those loans of $2.6 million. We can do that same calculation, or same change, over here for the loans less than $300,000. And again, put in C6, copy our formula down. And now we're going to see that the total value of those loans is $1.47 million. So we can get both of those answers by using the if functions and just using a value of true that's the actual loan amount rather than a 1 or a 0. So that's another way we can use if. If we don't want to write all these functions, though, we can just go straight to SUMIF. So SUMIF is going to be a function that lets us do what's in that entire column right there in one cell. And so the first thing you need to know about SUMIF is you have three arguments here. The first is the range. That's going to be where you test the second argument, which is the criteria. So in this case, we want to test the loan amount. So we want to know how many loans are, just like before, greater than $200,000. Now, what do we want to know about them? We want to add up the loan amounts. So we're going to actually pick that same array of loan amounts, and that's going to be our sum range. So in SUMIF, it's criteria range, criteria, sum range. All right, that's the order that we're going to use and that SUMIF expects. And so here we get the same answer we did as doing the individual if functions. So either way is okay. The SUMIF allows you to do it all in one cell. So now let's change it and do SUMIFs. So the big difference in SUMIFs is because we can now do multiple conditions, the first argument is now the sum range. So in this case, what we want to sum up, that's going to be the loan amount. So we're flipping the order of the sum range. It used to be last, now it's first. So we're going to sum that up. Our criteria range is our second argument. In this case, we're using the same criteria range. And finally, our criteria is still going to be the greater than, not 20,000, but 200,000. Let's copy our formatting. And we get the same answer. But SUMIFs now allows us more flexibility. Right now we can condition on multiple criteria. So let's go back in there, and we can do another criteria, say interest rate. We used this in the last video. So let's check for when the interest rate is greater than 10%. So now we have two sets of criteria, both that the loan amount has to be bigger than 200,000 and the interest rate has to be bigger than 10%. We have our two loans, if we recall. These two loans, if we add those up, the total value is $516,674. So with SUMIFs, we can layer on multiple conditions across different columns, and we can really add as many conditions as we want and still add up those values, which is going to be really useful for things like portfolio analysis, where we want to get an idea of, for example, how many loans are on time or late or in default.